Chasca review. So I spent the entire day testing every single team possible for Chasca as well as all the different weapons and artifacts, and I will go over my findings in this video as well as give you a mini guide section and some tips you should know to tell you whether Chasca is worth your Primo Gems or not. Now, I'm pretty sure most people know her kit by now, so I will be brief. The normal attack talent has a very cool animation, but it's not worth mentioning because you're never really gonna use it. Her elemental skill lets her mount a flying gun. Now, you can use two different modes, either normal attack or hold for the charge attack mode. The normal attack does very minimal damage, so don't use it. Charge attack will load up to 6 bullets, and based on how many enemies you mark within a proximity of where you're aiming, and once it's fully loaded, it will automatically fire to hit those enemies. And also, her bullets have a chance to be converted to any of these 4 elements in your team based on how many you have, and you can get a maximum of 4 converted bullets. The 4th, 5th, and 6th bullets will be converted based on how many of these elements that you have. So you have 3 of them in your team, you will be guaranteed to have at least bullet number 4 all the way to bullet number 6 to be converted into these elements. Thanks to one of her Ascension 1 passives, you also have a chance to convert the 3rd bullet into any of the elements you have, and the chances increase based on how many of the 4 elements you have in your team. 33% for 1, 66% for 2, and 100% for 3. Now, her burst works similarly to her charge attack, except it fires 6 bullets where 2 of them are guaranteed to be converted to any of the swallowable elements based on how many you have in your team. Now, expectation versus reality. So this is a new section for this type of video where I'll talk about my expectations before her release and whether they were met or not in what we have right now. So here's a few expectations that I set for Chasca before she came out. First, based on the videos I saw on a lot of other content creators, her damage is supposed to be good, mostly for single target, estimating about 60 to 70k DPS per rotation. Second is that she flies high enough that most melee attacks won't be able to hit her. Third, she might be able to travel as good as Wanderer, possibly, maybe, hopefully better. And then the fourth one is that she is not jank to play from what I could see. Maybe she's a very casual level character to play that makes her more accessible to people. And lastly, she is going to be a consistent DPS. Now, to address everything one by one. So for the first one, her DPS, I think it meets the sheets theoretically, but it does feel a little bit lower than that. I feel like her performance is very similar to Risley and Cloran and their best teams, and I feel like maybe Cloran could edge out a little bit here. Because from all the testing I did, I went against the current Spiral Abyss, which actually is made for her. So every time you hit enemies with a charge attack, you gain like an attack buff up to 80% attack. So the performance that I'm going to be talking about later will be a little bit skewed based on the current buff. Now, the part where she flies high enough when melee attacks won't hit, this is very much true. Compared to Wanderer, she actually flies slightly higher than him, so most of the time she won't be able to get hit by any melee attacks unless you go against enemies like the Primo GeoV-Shap or the Hydrotalpa who has massive hitbox and massive swings. But regardless, this will reduce the need for you to use any interrupt resist character like Xingqiu or Beidou, or use any shield unit like Layla or Zhongli in your team. They're not going to be necessary, but in certain situations, they might actually be a little bit more comfortable for you to play her with. Now, the third one, in terms of traveling, she is actually better than Wanderer both in sprinting and in just regular slow hovering mode. Chasca in her slow mode can actually travel way further than how much Wanderer is able to do, so here's a quick comparison section that I did. And the biggest thing is that unlike Wanderer can only go up. Chasca can actually go both up and down with a very minimal cost, although going up does consume quite a bit. I don't understand why Hoyo decided to do this, but it is what it is. Now, in terms of her being a not jank character to play, a casual level difficulty, this is very much true, because all you have to do is activate her elemental skill, take aim, and just hold your normal attack and let the damage do its wonder. I feel like she is the complete opposite of what Yoimiya is, where you have to spam your normal attack in a brain dead manner, but this time it's like Nuvilette, except all you have to do is press 2 buttons for the entirety of your rotation and damage gets done. Now, for her being a consistent DPS, I would say not really. While the number of bullets getting converted is consistent based on how many of the PHEC elements you have, you want to at least run 3 PHEC characters in your team in order to guarantee 4 bullets converted. Any less, which means you will be getting up to a minimum of 1 all the way to 3 bullets converted only. The order and the type of the bullet infused in her charge attack is completely RNG, thus making her damage fluctuate based on the order and the type of the bullets being loaded, since the final bullet being loaded into her gun will be the bullet that will fire first. So the reactions can fluctuate between doing Vaporize, Electrocharge, Melt, and all the different reactions based on what your team is. So she is consistent in the damage that she does, but at the same time, you can't exactly control the order of how her bullets are loaded and where do you want to put it. So sometimes you may be doing big damage and other times you'll be doing a little bit less damage, but generally it's not so noticeable from my personal experience. Now, for the mini guide section, I'm gonna keep it short, but I'm also gonna include my findings over all the different tests that I did. Now, for her talents, obviously leave her normal attacks, prioritize her elemental skill over her burst, although her elemental burst does do a good portion of her damage, so don't leave that completely at level 1. And in terms of her artifacts, she does have an array of options to choose from. First one being Obsidian Codex, and then we have Marechaussee Hunter with Furina, Wanderer's Troop, Viridescent Veneer, and of course, Scrolls. So to see how good these artifacts are compared to each other, I tested Chasca with the Furina, Bennett, and the C6 Ororon team on the first chamber, first half of the current Spiral Abyss in floor 12. And here are the clear times. Now, the overall result is surprisingly, the Viridescent Veneer DPS build is actually the best by far with a 46-second clear time. Against the Consecrated Crocodile, it was able to consistently kill the Crocodile in a single rotation despite only having 68 crit rate. This is quite crazy when you actually keep in mind that my Marechaussee Hunter and my Codex build has almost 100% or if not straight up 100% crit rate. And then this is followed by the Marechaussee Hunter. Surprisingly, out of all my best run, the fastest Marechaussee run I could get was with 50-second clear time on this chamber, although I am missing a little bit of crit rate in order to max it up by 100. It could just be RNG or it could just be consistency, but regardless, I think most of their performance is quite similar. And of course, this is followed by two different artifact sets, being the Obsidian Codex and the Wanderer's Troop with a very similar clear time of about 55 seconds. Unfortunately, I couldn't test the Natlan support set because I simply did not have enough pieces, so you're gonna have to take this with a grain of salt. I think overall most artifacts are very similar in performance. Depending on what team you run, I think a good all-rounder would definitely be Codex. Marechaussee is a good alternative if you only have Furina, but otherwise you can use Wanderer's Troop, and in certain teams I think Viridescent Veneer is going to be her best option in certain teams. Now for weapon options, I did a bit of testing to really see how fast these teams were able to clear. Once again, we used the same build, the same team, Furina, Bennett with Ororon, and I took the AT-EM test cards, and here are the clear times. So out of all of them, the most consistent one so far is actually the Song of Stillness at 55 seconds because it's really just the fastest time that I could get. Surprisingly, the Scion of the Blazing Sun, the Battle Pass bow, was actually quite consistent. If it wasn't for the crit rate stat that it actually gave, I think this weapon would probably have a bit more of a value, especially with the recent Abyss being mostly single target oriented. And of course, Song of Stillness is the second best, followed by Ahama Yumi after Viridescent Hunt with the crit rate, and then we have other options like Fading Twilight, Stringless, and the lowest being Prototype Crescent due to how difficult it is to trigger a passive. So we do have an array of options, so this is some of the weapons that you can definitely consider if you want to put it on your Chasca. And of course the Natlan Craftable or Chain Breaker or whatever it's called, which is supposed to be decent for her, but I don't want to use my Dream Solvents in order to craft that because I don't have a lot of prototypes, and I'd rather just wait for the new weekly boss for Natlan to show up. And of course, we do have the Gacha Bow, which supposedly at Refinement 5 is going to be her best 4-star weapon. So if you are pulling for the weapon banner, you can consider that. Now, in terms of the best team, so I tested, I think, over about 20 teams, and here are what I think to be her best teams for you to run on her. Of course, the first one, the best, is going to be the Furina Bennett core, or rather, it is one of the best. Any team with these two units in your Chasca team is going to boost Chasca's damage to possibly the highest it can be. The fourth slot, generally the best is supposed to be Ororon, but preferably you want your Ororon at Constellation 6. Otherwise, you can probably slot in a lot of other units, whether you want to run Kazuha or Shilonen, or you want to run like an off-field DPS like Fischl, or even you can do the Bennett Shangling combo. Regardless, as long as you have these two units with your Chasca, your team is going to do lots of damage, and your Chasca is going to vaporize every now and again. Now, the second team I would say is of course the Shangling team, aka the Bennett Shangling, alongside this C6 Ororon team. To no one's surprise, this team is actually the best one. If I were to look at the clear time that it has, I believe it cleared in about 46 seconds. Yeah, this one has one of the fastest clear time at about 55 seconds with the Bennett Shangling Ororon, only to be beaten by the Furina Bennett Shangling Chasca team. And as for the other teams, we do have the interestingly Shilonen, Furina, Ororon. Of course, this does have Furina and Ororon is C6, but either you use between Shilonen or Kazuha, I think the resistance shred from both of these support units are enough to actually buff the team's damage by quite a bit. So that's something you can definitely consider. Now, some honorable mentions would be slapping on Layla to anyone in the team. If you do have Constellation 4, it would boost Chasca's personal damage by quite a bit, but without it, it's still perfectly fine. As long as you run her with, say, like Favenia's Sword and 4 Tenacity, you should be able to add some utility to the team. So to sum things off, I think Chasca is definitely a okay DPS, a good DPS. She's not game breaking, but she's not necessarily bad either. In terms of meta, I definitely think that she is the weakest out of the 3 Natlan DPS right now, behind Kinish and Moalani. And in terms of builds, I feel like Chasca with Viridescent Venera might be the best all-rounder build, depending on what build you run. But since her best team wants you to run with the swirlable elements in mind, VV might be able to boost your entire team's overall damage, including Chasca herself, and it might be better than running full hyper carry with Obsidian Codex. In terms of exploration, she is the best airborne unit that we have right now, whether it be outside of Natlan where she's better than Wanderer, and it's going to be your basically like the best airborne exploration unit right now if you are in Natlan, especially in the new area when you pair her with the likes of Ororon or Kinish, or you could run all 3 of them together. Theoretically, you can achieve infinite flight with the new Night Sword transmission mechanic. I honestly feel bad for any non-Chasca owners trying to explore the new area because maybe they don't want to know how it feels like to actually explore Natlan without Chasca. The ability to fly from one cliff to the other cliff without having to worry about stamina or anything else. And if you have like Ororon or Kinish, well, if you don't have Natlan characters, then I think exploration is going to take a little bit of time for those players. But yet again, Mavuika might alleviate the issue, so we'll have to see when 5.3 comes out. Anyways, what do you guys think about Chasca? Is she a good unit in your opinion? Have you been farming for your Chasca? Have you been exploring the new area with her and enjoying the flying cowboy on top of a mounted gun? Or are you going to save for 5.3 because we have some very spicy information coming out about that patch and we may be getting some pretty good stuff? Regardless of what you think, feel free to leave it in the comments down below, and I think that's it for the video. This is Ethereal, signing off. Peace!